What if I told you that just 2 rabbits in your backyard could quietly produce enough meat to feed your family? Not just once, but over and over again all year long. No large farm, no expensive feed, no complicated system. Just 2 rabbits, and a method almost nobody talks about. It sounds unrealistic at first. Most people assume you need land, money, or years of experience before you can produce your own food. They picture large farms, tractors, barns, and endless work. But the truth is, some of the most efficient food systems in the world are happening quietly in small backyards, hidden behind fences, run by ordinary people. People who decided they were done depending on rising food prices. People who wanted control. People who wanted something simple, reliable, and sustainable. But here's the part that most beginners never hear. There's a mistake, a very common mistake, that causes people to fail within the first 30 days of raising rabbits. And once that happens, they quit, convinced that it doesn't work. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how this 2-rabbit system works, how it turns into a continuous source of meat, and why rabbits might be one of the most underrated animals in modern self-sufficiency. Because once you see how simple this really is, it changes the way you look at your backyard forever. Most people don't start with confidence. They start with doubt. They hear about backyard rabbits and think, can this really work? Is it worth the effort? Will I just waste my time? That's exactly where the story begins. Imagine someone living in a small house. No farmland. No big budget. Just a regular backyard. Food prices keep rising. Meat becomes more expensive every month. And slowly, the idea starts forming. What if I could produce my own? Not a full farm. Not a massive project. Just something small. Something manageable. Something that works. That's when they discover rabbit farming. At first, it sounds strange. Rabbits are often seen as pets, not a food system. But the more they look into it, the more it starts to make sense. Rabbits grow fast. They reproduce quickly. They require very little space. And most importantly, they can convert simple, low-cost feed into high-quality protein. So they decide to try. Just 2 rabbits. 1 male, 1 female. No big expectations. Just an experiment. The first few weeks feel slow. There's uncertainty. Questions. Small mistakes. Adjustments. But then, something happens. The system starts working. The female gives birth. A small litter appears. Then another. And suddenly what started as just 2 rabbits begins to multiply. Not in a chaotic way, but in a controlled, predictable system. And that's when everything changes. Because this isn't just about raising animals anymore. It becomes a system. A system that produces food. A system that supports itself. A system that grows over time. And once you understand that system, you realize something important. You don't need a large farm to be self-sufficient. You just need the right animals and the right method. So why rabbits? Why not chickens? Why not goats? Why not something more common? Here's what most people don't realize. Rabbits are one of the most efficient meat-producing animals you can raise. They reproduce faster than almost any other livestock. A single female rabbit can produce multiple litters in a year, and each litter can contain anywhere from 5 to 10 kits, sometimes even more. That means in just a few months, your system begins to expand. But it's not just about numbers. It's about efficiency. Rabbits convert feed into meat incredibly well. They require less food compared to larger animals, and they grow quickly. Within 8 to 12 weeks, a young rabbit can reach a size suitable for meat production. That's fast. Much faster than most livestock. And here's another advantage that often gets overlooked. Rabbits are quiet. No loud noises. No disturbances. No complaints from neighbors. This makes them perfect for backyard setups. Even in residential areas. They also require very little space. You don't need acres of land. A small, well-organized area is enough to run an effective system. But what truly sets rabbit apart is something most beginners completely underestimate. Consistency. With the right breeding system, rabbits don't just produce meat once. They produce it continuously, month after month, season after season. That's what makes this system so powerful. It's not a one-time result. It's a cycle. And that cycle begins with just 2 rabbits. The structure is simple. 1 buck, 1 doe, the male and the female. But how they're managed, that's where the system comes alive. Rabbits have a short gestation period, around 30 days. That means once the female is bred, you're only about a month away from the first litter. After giving birth, the cycle doesn't stop. With proper timing and care, the doe can be bred again, continuing the process. This creates a steady rhythm. Breed, birth, grow, repeat. And within a few months, you start to see the real power of the system. Because those first few rabbits begin to turn into many. But here's the part that surprises most people. It's not about letting them multiply uncontrollably. It's about control. A good rabbit breeding system is not chaotic. It's structured. It's planned. It's intentional. You decide when to breed. You decide how many to raise. You decide how the system grows. And that control is what turns a small setup into a reliable food source. But none of this works if your foundation is wrong. Because having rabbits is one thing. Setting them up correctly is another. And this is where many beginners make their first mistake. They underestimate the importance of the setup. They think, it's just rabbits. I'll figure it out. But your setup determines everything. It determines health. It determines cleanliness. It determines success. You don't need anything complicated. You don't need expensive equipment. But you do need a system that works. A simple cage system is often the best starting point. It keeps rabbits separated, reduces disease risk, and makes management easier. Each rabbit has its own space. Clean, controlled, predictable. Alternatively, some people use colony systems, a more natural environment where rabbits share space. This can work, but it requires more experience and careful management. For beginners, simplicity wins. A clean, organized setup, proper ventilation, protection from extreme weather, easy access for feeding and cleaning. That's all you need. Because remember, this is not about building a farm. This is about building a system in your backyard. A system that works quietly, efficiently, and consistently. But even with the perfect setup, there's one area where most people fail. And it's coming up next. Because feeding rabbits the wrong way can turn this entire system into a waste of time. And that's exactly where we're going next. Because feeding rabbits the wrong way is where most beginners lose everything. Not immediately, not overnight, but slowly, quietly, the system starts to fail. Costs begin to rise. Rabbits stop growing properly. Health issues appear. And before long, what was supposed to be a simple, sustainable system becomes frustrating and expensive. That's why this part matters more than most people realize. Because the secret behind a true backyard rabbit system isn't just breeding, it's feeding. And more specifically, how to feed them without depending on expensive commercial pellets. This is where the idea of free meat actually begins to make sense. Rabbits are natural foragers. In the wild, they don't eat pellets. They survive on grasses, leaves, weeds, and plant material. Their digestive system is designed to process simple, fibrous foods, the kind of things most people ignore or throw away. And that gives you an advantage, because instead of buying all their feed, you can use what's already around you. Grass from your yard, weeds from your garden, vegetable scraps from your kitchen, leaves from nearby plants. All of these can become food. But here's where many beginners go wrong. They assume rabbits can eat anything green. That's not true. Some plants are safe. Others are harmful. Some provide proper nutrition. Others don't. So the key isn't just feeding for free. It's feeding smart. A good feeding system combines 3 things: consistency, variety, and balance. Grass is one of the best base feeds. Fresh, clean grass, not sprayed with chemicals, provides fiber and keeps their digestive system healthy. Then you add variety. Leafy greens, safe weeds, garden trimmings, things like carrot tops, cassava leaves, and other local plants that rabbits can safely consume. This variety improves nutrition and keeps the rabbits healthy and active. And then comes balance. Even when using free feed, small amounts of concentrated feed can be used to support growth, especially for young rabbits. But the goal is not dependence. The goal is reduction. Because the more you rely on natural, available feed, the more sustainable your system becomes. And this is where things start to shift. Because now, your rabbits are not just consuming resources. They're converting waste into value. Things you would normally throw away are now producing meat, and that's powerful. But feeding is only one side of the system. Because once your rabbits are growing properly, the next question becomes, when do you harvest? This is where the timeline matters. Most meat rabbits grow quickly. Within 8 to 12 weeks, they reach a size that is suitable for processing. That means in less than 3 months, a newborn kit can become a source of meat. And because of the breeding cycle, this doesn't happen once. It happens continuously. While one group is growing, another is being born. While one is ready for harvest, another is halfway there. It becomes a flow, a rhythm, a system that produces steadily, without long gaps. And this is what makes rabbits different from many other livestock. Speed, efficiency, consistency. By month 3, you're no longer waiting for results. You're seeing them. And by month 6, your system is fully active. Multiple generations, consistent production, a reliable cycle. But here's the part that most people don't expect. This system doesn't just produce meat. It produces something else, something just as valuable. Rabbit manure. Now, most people don't think much about manure. They see it as waste, something to clean and remove. But rabbit manure is different. It's one of the most powerful natural fertilizers you can use. Unlike many other types of manure, rabbit droppings are considered cold. That means they can be applied directly to plants without composting. No waiting, no processing, no complications. You can take it and use it immediately in your garden. And the results are noticeable. Healthier plants, faster growth, better yields. So now, your system is doing more than feeding your family. It's supporting your garden. And your garden can start feeding your rabbits. Vegetables grow. Scraps go back to the rabbits. Manure goes back to the soil. It becomes a cycle, a closed loop. And this is where backyard rabbit systems truly connect with self-sufficiency. Because you're no longer just raising animals. You're building a system where everything supports everything else. But as powerful as the system is, it's not perfect. And this is where many beginners make mistakes that cost them everything. The first mistake is overbreeding. It sounds strange at first. More rabbits should mean more meat, right? Not always. If you breed too often without proper planning, you create more rabbits than you can manage. Feed becomes insufficient. Space becomes crowded. Health declines. And suddenly, your system becomes unstable. The key is control. Breeding should follow a schedule, a rhythm that matches your capacity to feed, house, and manage the rabbits. The second mistake is poor hygiene. Rabbits are sensitive animals. Dirty environments lead to disease. Damp cages create problems. Waste buildup attracts pests. And once illness spreads, it spreads quickly. Clean cages, dry bedding, proper airflow. Simple steps, but critical. The third mistake is improper feeding. Too much of one type of food. Sudden diet changes. Feeding unsafe plants. These mistakes don't always show immediately, but over time, they affect growth, reproduction, and survival. And then there's a mistake that ends many beginners before they even begin. Lack of patience. People expect instant results. They want immediate success. But systems take time to stabilize. The first few weeks may feel slow. The first cycle may not be perfect. But if you stay consistent, if you adjust, if you learn, the system improves. And once it starts working, it keeps working. Because this is not about perfection. It's about progression. Small improvements, better decisions, smarter management. And over time, those small changes create a system that runs smoothly, reliably, and efficiently. But there's still one important question left. Is this really free? Or is that just an idea that sounds good, but doesn't hold up in reality? That's what we're about to break down next. Because understanding the true cost is what separates beginners from people who actually succeed with the system. So, is it really free? Or is that just a catchy idea that sounds good, but doesn't hold up in reality? Because at some point, every beginner asks the same question. How much is this actually going to cost me? And the honest answer is this: it's not completely free, but it's far closer to free than most people expect. And more importantly, it becomes cheaper over time. At the beginning, you will need a few basic things. Your first 2 rabbits, a simple cage or housing system, basic feeding and watering setup. That's your starting point. And here's the key: you don't need to overcomplicate it. Many beginners make the mistake of trying to build the perfect setup from day one. Expensive cages, large structures, unnecessary upgrades. But that's not what makes the system work. What makes it work is consistency. A simple, clean setup is enough to start. Because once the rabbits begin to reproduce, your return starts coming back to you. And this is where the shift happens. Because now, instead of spending money on meat every week, your backyard is producing it, week after week, month after month. And that changes the equation. Feed costs can be reduced, especially if you're using natural sources like grass, leaves, and kitchen scraps. Water is minimal. Space is minimal. Maintenance is manageable. So while there is a starting cost, the ongoing cost becomes very low. And over time, the system begins to pay for itself. Not in cash, but in something just as valuable: food security. Because now, you're not relying entirely on markets. You're not affected the same way by price increases. You have control, and that control is what makes the system powerful. But there's another layer to this that many people don't think about at first. Because once your system is stable, once you understand the rhythm, you can scale. And scaling doesn't mean turning your backyard into a massive farm. It simply means expanding the system in a controlled way. Maybe you go from 2 rabbits to 6, then from 6 to 10. Not all at once, not rushed, step by step. And as your numbers increase, something interesting starts to happen. You begin to produce more than you need, more meat than your household consumes. And that's where opportunity appears. Because now you have options. You can share with others, you can trade, or you can sell. Even a small rabbit system can generate extra income when managed properly. Local demand for clean, home-raised meat is growing. People are becoming more conscious of what they eat, where it comes from, and how it's produced. And when you have a system that produces consistently, you're no longer just a consumer. You become a producer. And that shift changes everything. Because now, your backyard is not just saving you money. It's creating value. But here's the part that matters most. Scaling is not about speed. It's about stability. If you expand too quickly without the right structure, the system can break. Feed becomes insufficient. Space becomes crowded. Management becomes difficult. And everything you built starts to struggle. So the goal is not rapid growth. The goal is controlled growth. Understanding your limits. Expanding gradually. Maintaining quality. Because a small, well-managed system will always outperform a large, chaotic one. And this brings us back to the core idea. This entire system starts with just 2 rabbits. Not 10, not 20, 2. And from those 2, everything grows. But only if you approach it the right way. Only if you understand that this is not just about animals. It's about building a system. A system that connects your backyard, your food, your garden, and your daily life. Because once everything starts working together, that's when it becomes sustainable. Your rabbits feed your family. Your rabbits feed your garden. Your garden feeds your rabbits. It becomes a loop. A cycle that reduces waste, increases efficiency, and gives you more control over your resources. And in a world where so many people feel dependent on systems they can't control, that kind of independence matters. But here's something important to understand. This is not a shortcut. It's not instant. It requires effort. It requires learning. It requires consistency. There will be mistakes. There will be moments where things don't go as planned. But that's part of the process. Every successful system starts imperfect. What separates those who succeed from those who quit is not skill. It's persistence. The willingness to adjust, to improve, to keep going. Because once the system stabilizes, it becomes predictable. And predictability is what creates reliability. You know when litters are coming. You know when rabbits are ready. You know how much your system can produce. And that certainty removes a lot of the stress and uncertainty that comes with relying solely on external sources. So when people hear free meat, it's easy to misunderstand. It's not magic. It's a system that reduces cost, increases independence, and gives you control over something essential, food. And once you understand that, you start to see your backyard differently, not just as space, but as potential. Potential that most people never use, because they assume it's too complicated or not worth it, or impossible to manage. But the truth is, it's simpler than they think, and more powerful than they expect. All it takes is starting small, starting simple, starting with intention. Because those first 2 rabbits, they're not just animals. They're the beginning of a system that can grow, a system that can sustain, a system that can change the way you think about food forever. So the real question isn't whether this works. It does. The real question is, are you willing to start? Are you willing to take that first step and build something that most people overlook? Because once you do, you'll never look at your backyard the same way again. And if this opened your eyes, if this made you see the potential in something simple, then you're exactly who this channel is for. Because here on Herd and Harvest, this is what we do. We break down real systems, simple methods, practical ways to turn everyday space into something productive, not complicated theory, not unrealistic ideas, real working systems that you can actually apply. So if you want to learn more about backyard rabbits, livestock systems, and how to move closer to true self-sufficiency, make sure you subscribe to Herd and Harvest right now, because the next video might just be the one that shows you exactly how to take this even further. And trust me, you don't want to miss it.